I spend my whole day putting out fires. Repetition, predictability, and meaning. What you want to see is reps. How many reps have you been through? Vision without implementation is hallucination. Chaos will always come. How vulnerable do you want to be to chaos?
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Logbook podcast, where we uncover the strategies and insights driving extraordinary business growth. Today, we're joined by Scott Beebe, founder and head coach of Business on Purpose, a company dedicated to liberating business owners from chaos through systems, processes, and purpose-driven strategies. Scott brings a pretty unique background to his coaching practice, from walking into an SEC football team to selling pharmaceutical for Pfizer, planting churches, and even working in Nigeria. Now, based in South Carolina with his wife Ashley and 3 children, Scott helps business owners break free from the day-to-day operation who reclaim their time for what truly matters. Scott, it's great to have you on the show.
Zach, thanks. Thanks for making this. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Of course. I think perhaps the best place to start this, I'd love to hear a bit about yourself, background. I know I gave a little quick intro, but I'd love to hear it from your own words here.
Yeah. So I grew up all over the country as a kid, literally from east to west to the United States. And so I had a great opportunity to meet a variety of different people, see a variety of different things, to learn sort of what adaptation looks like when you go to a bunch of different places. So I was born in outside of DC, actually went all the way west to Portland, Oregon for a while, and then all the way back east, and then parts in between all along the way. And so I went to university in South Carolina, graduated, and did all those things that you just said before. We kind of usually start when people ask, what's your background? I can start with the start of a bad joke. It's a telemarketer, a pastor, and a drug salesman walk into a bar. And then I'll usually just say, well, I don't have a punchline. That's just my first 3 careers between those 3. And so my latest, we started this business just over 10 years ago at the time of this recording now, but just prior to that, I was running a very, very small little non-governmental organization. You mentioned work in Nigeria, and so we're working out of there as well. So it's a pretty fragmented blueprint of how we got to this point, yeah. But it's one where I've had the privilege of being able to see just a lot of different things, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually what I was going to say. I mean, it seems you've traveled, you mentioned all across the US, but you've also been internationally, even in Nigeria, which not everyone does, especially when they haven't even started their own company. Typically they might travel afterwards, after they somewhat delegate everything in their company, but you somewhat got to understand cultural differentiation, understand international perception, etc. And you've been able to apply that in your own work, which I think is really interesting. So you've obviously walked a pretty unique path before you even founding your company. And one thing I guess I'd be curious to hear is, was there any specific lessons that you've learned from having those past experience, career, that you feel really gives you an edge when it comes educating, working with through your clients that they perhaps wouldn't get elsewhere?
Yeah. I don't know what hardcore advice. I'm just a few months shy of 50, and I'm really, really trying to catch myself when asked for advice, because I think what it is probably ill-informed opinion at this point. And give me another 10, 20 years, and I might be able to put something together that sounds, something worthy of wisdom, which is good. I will say, looking back, one thing that I don't really like all that much, but I've also seen value in. And so unfortunately in life, that's what I'm learning right now, is that there's a lot in life that I really don't enjoy, and yet it provides long-term value, versus the things I do enjoy that just sort of provide short-term value. It's not always that way, but I'm sort of seeing that trend play out. So that's one trend. So maybe that's what I'll talk is in trends. Another trend that I've seen is just by getting up and doing the different things that either I've had the experience to do, you've had, whoever has had the experience to be able to do. The one thing that it's done is it's given us reps to do a thing over and over and over and over again. You mentioned working for Pfizer. Well, I'd go into doctor's offices all day, every day. So a lot of reps in doing that. Working in Nigeria is a lot of reps. I've spent months of my life in that country. And so there's hours and hours and days and weeks and months of reps to get sort of culturally acclimated. And so whatever the acclimation is that either we're directly looking for or is going to be valuable enough for us to be able to grab, really only comes through reps. I mean, you could have somebody tells you that, they did one thing one time, but I don't know that you're going to go to them for professional advice around that thing. Really what you want to see is reps. And so people ask you, well, how long have you been doing that thing? Really what they're asking is, how many reps have you been through before I entrust myself to you? And so that's probably one of the trends that I'm seeing now. in the rear view is to look back and go, hey, reps really are valuable.
Yeah, and I love the way that you framed it because typically, if, like you can have like different perspective from like anyone, but in my own experience, you'll only have of a good like opinion until you do it yourself enough time to actually value the data that you have. Like I might have a friend that's gonna tell me like, hey, you should do this in your business. This crushes it. They've done it twice and worked it 2 times, but I could do it myself 1,000 times and realize, you know what, this is maybe not the most efficient approach to go about this.
Yeah.
So it's more about making conclusion with information and data after doing it yourself, which is exactly what you're saying, like
Yeah.
doing the reps itself. And it's really just about doing the work. Like, a lot of
Mm.
people are going to procrastinate, just think about doing all these things when at the end of the day, it just comes back to doing the things that drives like the results here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's exactly what you were conveying there.
Mm.
I love that. And another component that I thought was really interesting is you use like the word chaos like a lot. And I feel like a lot of business owners, even like myself sometimes, like you will be stuck working in the business as opposed to actually working on like the business, which is obviously a no-no. Like you shouldn't be doing that. Like what would you say like chaos typically looks like for like the clients that you work with? Is it more so like there's systems all over the place, or they're just literally just working in like the business? I'd love for you to shed like some light on that.
Yeah. We have a strong conviction that we have an enemy that just sort of prowls like a lion looking to devour, there's another version that says it's looking to steal, kill, and destroy. And so what we in the business community name that as is chaos, as we believe chaos is prowling. It sometimes will show its face, sometimes it hides back in the woods, it comes out another place. And some of our leadership coaching, what we provide for our clients who've been with us a long time, is we say one of the first things we talk to them about is problems are cyclical, they're circular, they're perennial. What does that mean? That means that the same problem just keeps coming back. You're like,
Yeah.
and we as owners get so frustrated that that problem won't go away.
Mhm.
Well, what leadership is the equipping of people with knowledge tools to then go solve those perennial problems. What you said, working on it instead of
Mhm.
going and putting out that problem, doing it again. Now it's backing
Yeah.
up and eventually going, all right, how can I put something in place, either with people, machines, whatever, to
Mhm.
to solve that perennial problem? Because that problem is not going to stop. It's
It's
a
gonna keep
perennial
going.
problem.
Yeah.
It's going to keep coming back. And so I think that's one of the things that, again, looking back in some of the trends that we've seen. So you asked, how does chaos look in a small business? Well, we actually listen to the phrases that people say. And so they'll say things like, I spend my whole day putting out fires. We had one lady say that I feel like I'm spending every day waking up throwing Hail Marys just to try to get to the end of the day. Which, if you're an American football fan, you realize that Hail Mary's strategy, that's not a way to win a Super Bowl.
It's
Is to
not.
get there. You might get one out of 10 or 20 or something like that. It's exciting on TV, but the reality is you don't want to wake up every day and depend your wins on Hail Marys. And so they'll say things. I'm juggling plates. I'm sitting at my kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night doing billing, receivables, whatever. So when you're hearing these sort of irritations or frustrations, there's chaos popping itself out of the woods and then slowly going behind. Here's where chaos really gets the owner, is the owner thinks there's no other way. So they just think that's just what we do. Like, unfortunately, if I want the quote freedom to run my own business, and then we as coaches are like, but you're not free at all. There's nothing about what you've shared with us that is free.
Yeah.
You feel completely bound by this thing, this monster that you've grown, rather than taking the step back. And so what we'll say about money, we'll say this about the business, is, are you serving the business, or is the business serving you? Are you serving money, or is money serving you? Are you serving a small business owner, a bookkeeper, a CPA, any outside advisor, or are they serving you? And so the reality is, yes, in life, we want to serve and not to be served. And yet in business, there are things that we need to be able to serve the mission. It's not serving us individually. It's serving the mission of what we're trying to get done, instead of us going and hiring somebody outside and we find ourselves having to manage what they said that they're going to do for us. And so there's different ways we've got to be able to look at that from a chaos standpoint, to go, no, we're not. Whenever you hire an outside vendor, you should not be in more chaos than before you hired them. That shouldn't
They
be the
should
case.
remove that chaos.
They should help
Exactly.
remove that. That's part of the point. And so having eyes to be able to see what chaos looks like day to day, yeah, of course, it's the big stuff. It's the easiest stuff. Where chaos really thrives is in deception. And so it will subtly. I just had a coaching call this morning, literally with a law firm. I've been with these guys for years and years and years, and they're bringing on a new attorney. and they're having to split offices. I said, well, what we need to do is set designated days to do closings for that particular office, or else you're just going to, because these offices are about 45 minutes away from each other. I can't do that. Can't do that. And so if you want to know what chaos sounds like to a business owner, it's when they say that you can't do that, because it's not true. It's not true. There's always workaround. There's always ways to be able to have eyes to see what you're doing and then go, how do I get this to somebody else to create a system that's repetitive so I don't have to think about this every day when I wake up?
Love that. And I love going back to like the point that you mentioned earlier, where like chaos is something that's a continuous cycle until that you actually implement a process that's always being like taken care of. Like a lot of people, you're going to put something on your to-do list, I'm going to address this problem, it's going to be fixed. But in a lot of cases, you're just delaying that problem just like coming back. When
Yeah.
instead you should probably be building a framework, creating SOPs, a system framework, so you can actually delegate this to someone
Yeah.
that can handle that chaos that you've had in your business. And then
Yeah.
you can focus on what is actually moving the needle for you, as
That's
opposed
right.
to just being, I can't do that, throwing Hail Marys every single day. And I'm not like strategically like thinking about like growing my business,
Mm-hmm.
which I think a lot of like small business owners, when you start, you're stuck into that in a way. Like you have to do everything. But once you get to actually scaling and hiring people, that's where you have to put those systems, those frameworks into play to just stop like the chaos in a way. And I mean, again, as you said, you can't stop it, but you can remove it from your plate by like delegating, creating these frameworks. On what one other thing I'd be curious about is, I mean, I know you mentioned obviously that the law firm that you work with for like a few years, is there somewhat like a like moment, like an eureka moment where you start working with a client, they've been struggling for like a while, and then it's like, okay, like I actually feel that I'm in like control. Is there like any like, I mean, it could be like a mental shift, a like practical framework that they implement, or anything specific that you've like noticed or?
I mean, I would say that there's a regularity of, whether I call it epiphany or eureka, it's, I think, awareness. So there are moments of awareness that come in that really give a shot of joy in the midst of that chaos. I think what's hard about business is chaos never leaves, and so there's always this underpinning of like, it's like you're vigilant to look, and vigilance is right. I think it's the right thing to do, but you're vigilant to look around and to see. What we don't want to do is be fearful or worried all of the time with that. It's a whole nother thing, because that just breeds anxiety and everything else. So what we're trying to do is set things up. And then there's an old phrase that says, be still and know. And literally what the phraseology means, that word be still, if you dig down on it, means drop it. Just drop it. Does that mean you don't do the SOPs? Does that mean you don't train the SOPs on a regular basis? No, absolutely not. What it means is you have a system for distributing all of those things with what we call the RPMs of great leadership: repetition, predictability, and meaning. Repetition, predictability, and meaning. So if you got the RPMs in place, you have a place every week where you're proactively training some of these tools. Then the rest of that time, the hard work, and this is hard for me. I don't do it always. But the hard work is to go, okay, I've trained on that. So now I'm going to trust what I trained on and trust the people that I did the training for to be able to do it. And 70% of the time it'll work. And the 30% of the time you'll start to realize, oh, there's an irritation and a frustration. You go, but I trained it and I've got the right people and I've got all that. Why? It's because leadership is drama lived out in real time. And so as long as we're going to be dealing with people, there's going to be glitch. There's going to be 10%, 5%, 20%. I don't know what the number is, but there's going to be a percentage of glitch with that. And part of being a business owner is learning how to not be okay, but learning how to cope with the glitches and not allowing that to turn into fear, worry, anxiety, all of that, but allowing, or to redirect that into acknowledge, okay, I'm in a human experiment here. Like, our business is an organism. It's a living, breathing thing, and it's a human experiment. I don't know what's going to happen. About a month ago, at the time we're talking right now, four of us were set out to go to Las Vegas. There's a huge, huge, huge construction show out there. It's been one of the biggest ones the whole year. And we have a lot of clients out there, but we also give talks at that thing. We get three particular talks at this thing, and those talks are really hard to get. So we're set to talk on a Tuesday, Wednesday. Sunday, I find out that my father-in-law's had a heart attack. Monday morning, he passes away. I can't go. My wife can't go. She was going to go with me. She wasn't speaking or really working it, but she can't go. I can't go. Her father just passed away. So the two other team members that were headed out there, one of our director of coaching, another one of our coaches. They're on their way out. I get a call that Monday night. So my father-in-law passed away that morning, unexpected. I get a call that night at 7 that one of the other coaches was on his way to Vegas, gets off the airplane, gets a message on his phone, call home, calls his mom. They found his dad dead. All this happened in the same day. And so the reality is we had everything set. We had everything buttoned up. We had the talks were done, the pre-event communications were done, the bookings were done, everything was done.
Yeah.
And then boom, boom, chaos. And so the reality is we've got to start to learn. I do too. Pot calling this kettle black, but we've got to start to learn to take those things and go, all right, I'm going to learn to cope because this is not going to change. And as the owner, I have ultimate rubber stamp responsibility for this thing to make sure that the mission is getting accomplished, not just my dreams, desires, but the actual mission is getting accomplished for the things that we're looking to get done. And so we really do have to think as business owners of this idea of chaos as something that we will never be able to part from. That's naive to think that. But it is something that we can build fortress from to keep that at bay from time to time.
Yeah, and I mean, with like that example that you mentioned, like that's not something you could have predicted. Like you've had
No
like
way.
the framework, you had the system, you were like all planned, like all ready to go.
Right.
And that's like the human component, which is normal. You can't control that. You can't plan for every single like variable, making sure that everything is perfect. That just doesn't happen.
We've got a core value. It's called 85-15. And here's what it means is the business is going to provide our team members with 85% of what they need. We're going to be able to predict 85% of what's going to happen. But the 15 is where that unique brilliance has to come in. The 15 is where you have two family members pass away in the same day on your way out to Vegas. Like we had the 85 built, but the 15 kind of can get you. And so it's beginning to work. But that's where I go back to those RPMs: repetition, predictability, and meaning. If you can begin to bake those in, well, Scott, that's theoretical. What is that? No. Team meetings. How do you make those repetitive, predictable, and meaningful? KPI scorecards. How do you make them repetitive? Most business owners know what needs to be done. Really, the reason they call people like us is because they're not doing it themselves. Number one, they kind of want to skip the line. We've got all these tools built that we can customize quickly, but really they know what to do. My old mentor, he's passed away now. He used to say this. Dan Miller used to say, "Oh, I was thinking of another phrase. If you're not paying attention." The phrase just left me. It'll come back to me here in just a minute. But this reality is we've got to be able to set people up with repetition, predictability, meaning they know what to do. The issue is you just got to go implement it. I do have a Thomas Edison quote. It said, "Vision without implementation is hallucination." And so you can have a vision of creating KPIs, of creating process, repetition, all of that. But if you don't implement, then not only will you recycle back into chaos, because people will go, well, chaos always comes back. Why do I need to do all this work preventing? Well, you're not preventing chaos. Chaos will always come. The question is, how vulnerable do you want to be to chaos? And the more you've got a business that's repetitive, predictable, and meaningful in things we can see, Michael Gerber said, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. So if it's all up in your head, then you don't have things that we can see. But if you got RPMs in things that we can see, you got a much tighter fortress than the chaos that will continue to come back and barrage. It'd be harder for it to get in.
Yeah. And going back to like that Thomas Edison quote that you mentioned, because that was actually going to be like one of the other things I wanted to like touch on, because I've heard you talk about that distinction between doing and then like thinking and like delegating. And I know we obviously talked about more so the like practical like application, like how you can make sure to have like that 85% and then you have like that 15%. But how do you actually go about helping like business owners somewhat make that like mental shift as far as like actually doing the work that needs to be done as opposed to just thinking, etc. there?
Yeah, one of the things we do before we ever allow a client to come work with us or us to work with them is we have a 26-point ideal client checklist, and we know how many hours it takes every week. I'm not going to say it on this podcast just in case somebody hears it and they call us and they're like, "Hey, this is how many hours I have." We have on there exactly, it's a number, it's a little range, single digit numbers, but numbers nonetheless. And it's a range of numbers. And one of our questions is, how much time are you willing to invest in this process? And the number one response we'll get is whatever it takes. And we won't allow it. We actually think it's a cop out to say that. And so what we'll say instead is no, not whatever it takes. I need a number. How many hours a week are you willing to carve out to put into this? And so they'll usually tell us something, and then we'll give them the range that we have written down on our sheets. We're not making it up. In doing that, what we've found is people can commit the time, they will pull through on that. So the accountability comes in the pre-commitment. Hey, before we dive into this, we're just going to tell you the truth of what this is going to cost you. And so when we go into things, we really do need to tally the cost of what this thing's going to cost to us, not just the money outlay, but the time outlay, the attention outlay, the energy outlay, all of these things that we're going to be able to give to it.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting that you take that approach, because like a lot of people, they might run a coaching company, consulting, etc., but they're not going to somewhat phrase that commitment that someone has to make like beforehand. And I feel that's something that you have to do. Like you have to tell them like, hey, if you cannot dedicate this amount of time, you're not going to be a good fit in the first place.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you have like that ICP somewhat list that they have to like check, and then you only work with the people that actually want to grow. Because in a way, what people are looking for, and like correct me if I'm wrong here, but they're looking for like accountability in a way. Because they already know, as you mentioned, they know what they need to do.
Yeah.
But it's more about doing it. And then some people literally just want someone to be beside them and push them to actually do what they're supposed to do in the first place that they already know they're supposed to do. Which
That's the quote, by the way. Came back to me. You just said it. So Dan Miller used to say, they come for the content, but they stay for the connection. And really what he's saying is they come for all the tools and the stuff they see, but they stay for the accountability. That's what they're looking for.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally like spot on. Beside like what I was saying there, but I love that. And another thing, I know we were speaking about like obviously coaching, consulting. A lot of like people from like my experience, like sometimes feel like somewhat like isolated in like a way. Like when they go, they try to like build their company. Is there like an approach that you take to somewhat like remove that component? I mean, I know some people are going to do group coaching, for example, but in some cases that's not the best approach. Sometimes you want like one-on-one, and it really depends on like the context as well.
Yeah. We take a multi-pronged approach to it. So one-on-one coaching is our bread and butter. Every client we have has a dedicated one-on-one coach. It's Brandon, it's Brent, it's somebody, it's a person. Yeah. They have their cell phone number, they know their kids, our coaches know these people's kid, like all this. So it's a very what we call a high frequency relationship kind of coaching model. And yet at the same time, we also do live events all throughout the year, both virtual and in person. So we just had it was actually our 10-year anniversary about 3 weeks ago. And so we had about 250 people that all came in and we celebrated. There's an energy that you can grab from other people. And there are even vacuums a lot of times where you'll feel yourself and you just think, I need another voice in this right now, like this decision, whatever we're going to do. I got a decision in our business right now. I'm just like, and I've got people around me. Like I'm a part of a mastermind. I've got coaching. We've got that. And still I'm like, there's one voice I'm missing. It's not that those are bad voices. I need those voices in so many areas of my life, but I'm missing this voice right now. Yeah. And so you can start to feel yourself have that. And so having a community, if you go back to the world's major religions, very rarely is isolation a prescription for a world religion. It's usually congregation, right? Gathering, communities, things like that. And so I've heard somebody say recently, actually, I mean, this is an old adage we've heard 1,000 times, but I just heard somebody say it again. Worst form of human punishment. What is it? It's isolation, right? Solitary confinement. And so having some community, whether it is a community you put together of business owners in your area, even just simply joining like a BNI, some sort of networking that forces you to get out. That's what a lot of us are missing a lot of times. And so in this revolution of work from home for a lot of people, it sounds really cool. Flexibility, work from home, no commute, all that. Well, it's also dramatically increased isolation for people. Yeah. And so that's why you've also seen an increase of community-based programs, whether they be coaching programs or, whatever they might be for business owners to be able to be a part of, to be able to go out, because we need that stuff. We need that. So you know how it is when you get stuck and then you go outside for a walk, you're like, wow, I feel better. But the whole time you're inside, you're like, I don't want to go for a walk. I don't want to go for a walk. I don't want to go for a walk. Then you go do it. You're like, man, I'm really glad I went for a walk. And so the same thing, surrounding yourself with community. So you got to have an authoritative voice who knows what they're doing, somebody who's been a guide down these paths before. Mm-hmm. But there can also be just some encouraging voices and just general perspective voices. Hey, here's what I see in you. I don't know if this is right, but I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. right now.
Mhm.
It looks like it's cloudy outside. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. Now, I could go outside, it could be totally blue. But the reality is it just looks like from where I'm sitting right now, it's cloudy, you know? And so having that perspective can be very, very helpful.
I love that. And like two things. I know you mentioned like taking like those walks, and I feel like that's so true. Like I think I saw like a study where your brain, I don't know what it is exactly. I'm not sure if it's actually stimulate, but like your brain just thinks like more creatively when you
Yeah.
go onto like a walk, especially when you don't like bring your phone, for example.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's something you have to do. Like that's like I think I saw like this one like tweet like a few weeks ago or something. It was saying that the best thing that you could do for your business is sometimes just going to take a walk, which is
Yeah.
like really interesting for me
Yeah.
that way. And then another thing as well is you were really talking about having that like that approach with your team. They know like the kids, like maybe the dog name, etc. of like the clients that you work with. And it seems that you've built really a company culture in a way that's like really like client customer relationship oriented in a way. And I feel that's really something a lot of companies need to start doing, especially if you're coaching, consulting people, etc. Like you're really involved. You're becoming someone like that partner in crime that they like
Yeah.
rely on to like help them. And if you can
Yeah.
have that more relationship based approach, I mean, you're going to reduce the churn. They'll want to stay longer with you. They'll feel more of that connection. And I feel that's something, I mean, from what I could tell from your conversation and what I've seen from past podcasts, it seems that you've somewhat nailed that. I know you mentioned you're only 50, much more to learn, but from what
Yeah.
I could tell,
We've nailed it on effort. And so I think we've given great effort towards it. Outcomes, I think it's great. I think people on our team, we have a team of 10 full time, and I think this is a meaningful place to work. Is it always a fun place to work? No, it's not, because work is not always fun. There's a lot of work that's just Tuesday at
work.
2:15, you know, and so it's just work. But I would also say we got another core value. It's called a work worth doing. And so we do have eyes for work that is worthy work, meaning it's worth doing. And so for us to just go sell trinkets for us is not worthy work. For other people, that's great worthy work and how they live that out. For us, it's not. And so our worthy work is to go one-on-one with people, have in-depth relational conversations. It's hard because it's emotional labor. It's emotionally very, very draining. So I was a pastor for a few years of my life, and I liked about 20% of that work. There was another 80%. I was like, that's why they call them pastors. And I don't think I'm one of them. There was a lot of just sitting and caring in that world, right? And as coaches, we don't have to do as much sitting and caring, but we show caring by pushing. And just like a athletic coach or a military commander or somebody like that can take and go, hey, we need to go to the next thing. It's time to get out of bed. It's time to get out of here. You keep making the same excuse over and over again. Let's get out of that cycle right now and let's go into something else. And so everybody Bill Gates said it famously, everybody needs a coach. Does he mean that everybody needs a business coach? Well, business owners do, but we all need a coach's voice in our life, at least one of them. And why? It's because it's the same thing when it was Tuesday evening at 7 and you were on the Little League baseball team. You weren't going to go to practice by yourself. There was no internal motivation, but you knew it needed to be there, and the coach was going to be there to push you.
I love that. And I think perhaps like wrap things up here, going back to somewhat how we started with like a lesson based like your past experience for like any like business owners that they're like feeling like overwhelmed. So you mentioned they're dealing with the chaos every single day. They haven't put those system frameworks into place, somewhat like pushed that aside like a little bit. Is there like one like practical thing that you would like point out to take? Today, if you're going to do something to really like help you move forward, make sure you focus on efforts that are moving the needle, what would that be?
Okay. I'll give it in two forks. One fork is if the owner doesn't want to put in a lot of work, then
Mhm.
quit and go get a job. So that's one side. Sorry, I'm a coach. That's what we do. And like, because here's the thing, if you're not committed to creating a culture where people want to come and do hard things, then what you're doing is you're hiring people whose livelihoods are dependent on the thing you built, which I think is totally admirable. But if you're unwilling to reinvest in that thing that you built to create an environment where people can come and do hard things, then please spare them. Please let them go somewhere else and go find. But don't give the illusion that you got it all buttoned up, or at least are working to have it buttoned up. None of us have it all buttoned up, but at least working to have it buttoned up when in reality, they're going to show up day one and be like, oh man, I forgot it was their first day. Right. And so that's, if you're not willing to put in the work to put in repetition, predictability, and meaning, shut the thing down, move on to something else. But if you are willing to put in the work and go, hey, it's not going to be perfect, it's going to be pretty ugly, but I want to do things that are repetitive, predictable, meaningful. I want to capture those processes and all that. Before you move in any of that, before any financial dashboards, any process dashboards operationally, any administrative function updates, any of that, really where a human being needs to start. And this is millennia old wisdom. So this is not coming from me.
Sure.
But there's something that was written, I think it was recorded about 3,500 years ago in the Jewish tradition. It said this: write the vision down so that those who read it may run. Write the vision down so that those who read it may run. And about, depending on the age of the earth, I don't get into all that, but let's just, based on the historical documents, 5, 6, 7,000 years ago, 4,000, something like that, there was a Jewish man who was promised, go to a land that I will show you and I will make you into a great nation. And he goes on saying, well, that's vision. And so he had a vision to go there, which also meant he did not have a vision to go these 400 other places he could go. And so when we articulate a vision, it says, write the vision down so that those who read it may run. So everybody else who's going to read your vision, wait, does that mean I share my vision with others? Yes, absolutely. Maybe not all of it. If some of it's private, super private, then don't share that part of it. But others of it, who's your ideal customer? What does your future team look like? What are your products and services look like? That's vision. And so you write that down and go, this is what we're going to do, and this is where we're going, which also means we're not going these other places. If you can start there and just answer this simple question. If you want to start, we got templates for all this, but just answer this question. What do I want? And so if you want to take one step to move towards all the others that you're going to need to take to have intentionality in the business, just answer that question. And then when you answer it and you look at the response, ask yourself why about 6 times. What do I want? I want that. Why? Well, because. Why? Well, because. Why? Well, because. And get down. About layer 4, 5, or 6, you'll hit oil. And you'll finally go, that's what I want. That's the thing that I want right there.
It's going to be the haha eureka moment as we.
Yeah, there's your eureka moment. Yeah, you were talking about.
I love that. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Scott. And if like anyone wants to get in touch with you, is there like any best place they should be looking at here, or?
Yeah, actually, our website's a pretty cool spot. If you go to, I've got a couple books on there. I just put my latest book out. It's actually for contractors, but it's really anybody, business owner can read it. Just replace contractor with your name. But if you go to businessonpurpose.com/book, so businessonpurpose.com/book, and you can see my first book and my second book are both there. And it's a good, I wrote the book so people could fully understand the business side of processing out of business. So it's really good for both owners and team members as well.
Perfect. We're going to put that in the description if anyone wants to check that out. Scott, thank you so much for your time. This was an amazing conversation.
Zach, I'm really grateful that you'd have me on. Thanks. I know it's a lot of work to put on a podcast, so thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Of course.